Welcome to episode 1401 of The Sleeper and the Bust. I am Justin Mason, joined as always by Jason Collette on Sundays. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. You guys watching don't have to see my face today, so that's an upgrade for you all. Well, actually, I have to see a still image, but I am in a parking lot and I'm trying to juggle. We've got multiple activities on the home front today, and so I am in a parking lot. Just as a historian, you would appreciate this. I am right down the street from the birthplace of President James K. Polk in Pineville, North Carolina.
James K. Polk, known for war crimes and getting us the territories of around Mexico. So there we go. Nice. We are joined by a fantastic guest today. A very highly requested guest. When I put out the call to action for names, especially people we hadn't had on the podcast before, James Schiano was the top name on the list. So, James, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Justin. I can't even conceive being the most requested guest. Who out there would ever want to hear me talk more? The amount I already do, but appreciate that. Also, I think the old term saying is, long time listener, first time caller. That's kind of how I feel right now being on this podcast. So it's really appreciate being here.
Well, I think technically been on the podcast before because you were on Potapalooza and I broke that hour up and put it onto the pod. But this is your first official time. So why don't you remind everybody where you can reach social media and then talk about what you do in the industry.
Yep, guys. So Twitter, Blue Sky is just the name, James Schiano, Schiano. I work for Rotoworld. I do game recaps for them. Me and Eric Samolsky host a Q&A every single Monday at noon where we go through lineup questions, start sit, waiver stuff, things like that. I also have the Met Stuff podcast. If you guys watch the video, see the Met Stuff behind me. That's YouTube and podcast with my guy Mark, Giraffe Neck Mark, and also my own YouTube channel, which is just my name, James Schiano, where I just go through all your basic fantasy information you're ever going to need to set your lineups, make trades, do anything you want to do there. So you can find me in a lot of places. Hard to miss me, truthfully, at this point.
There you go. We are going to be talking about some news and some notes and then jumping right into FAAB because we have another FAAB Sunday we have to cover. Don't forget, you can follow Jason on Blue Sky at Jason Collette, Baxter, whatever the .blueski thing is. And you can follow me on all social media platforms, Justin Mason FWFB. Let's jump into our first piece of news. And that is CJ Abrams to the IL with a hip injury. James, how worried are you about this one?
I'm pretty worried. He stole that base in the game he came out, and then he kind of came up with a lame, tried to play a few more innings, and then cut out. With Abrams, it just always feels like 5 steps forward, 10 steps backwards. Like anytime he ever develops any momentum whatsoever, something always goes wrong, and he's suddenly unable to build on it. And also just, it seemed like he was started to play a little bit better. Like you get that feeling with Abrams, like, oh, here's the step. Without that happening, a hip injury for a speedster is just not a very good situation.
Yeah, I'm a little bummed by this one as well. Jason, where are you at on Abrams?
Not happy because I do have him in GDD, and it's never good when you lose one of your top 5 picks to an injury like this, especially a guy that you were counting on for speed, that now you have to greatly reduce what his projected stolen bases would be this year, because even if it's a short term, it's still, it's a lower half leg injury. So that's my concern with him. And hopefully it's nothing too bad. Maybe he focuses a little bit more on the power this year to make up for the loss of speed.
Yeah, this is a bummer because you're definitely going to have to kind of account, though thankfully, as Jason, I think, sent me last night, speed is up quite a bit across the league. So hopefully it won't be too hard to replace that speed for people who lost him.
I could talk a little bit about that if you'd like me to. I've been looking at the numbers on a daily basis, and right now the stolen base rate across the league is up. Like we have the easiest way to look at this is take the stolen bases plus caught stealing and combine that, take that sum and then divide it by the number of contests. So not the number of games, but we've had, like in this season, we've had 438 games. So it's 219 contests. And if you take the stolen base total divided by that, we have 2.15 stolen base attempts per game at this point of the season, right? This time last year, that was 1.75. That's a significant jump in stolen bases. And the reason why? Because the league's not hitting we're still tracking 9 points behind batting average this time last year. And since the league's not hitting, and because it's been so stinking cold everywhere, the ball's not going anywhere, we're actually tracking behind this time last year on home runs now. So
Wow.
where it happened to the torpedo bats and the juice ball talk? It's gone because the offense just is not happening. So these teams are back to, okay, if the ball's not going to travel and we can't get balls through the infield and these fly ball and the outfield defense is so good these days, then we're stealing bases again. So they're running again. And so there should be sources out there, Pittsburgh, like Isaiah kind of Falefa has been running, that type of thing. So you have to go look for your sources and steals because the league is running more now and it'll be something to watch. But this is a continuation because I said in spring training, they were running a lot in spring training. There's a strong correlation between those two, but we are actually tracking behind this time last year offensively now. And this week of cold weather really put a number on the overall numbers. They've been stuck in neutral with a, like I said, 235 league batting average, a 313 OBP, and a 383 slug with a 282 BABIP. Yuck, 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 yuck.
And this is a really interesting thing to track because I mentioned this after kind of the first week of the season that the Pittsburgh Pirates were a team that were running a ton. They stole 19 bases in the first week of the season. You know how many they've stolen since? 2.
It's matchups, baby. We talked about it when that happened. You have to look at the matchups and where those you have to take advantage of them. Like anytime your team's facing the Nationals, Kyber Ruiz is a windmill. Just run on him all day long. But there's other guys out there that just aren't good. James?
Also, for Rotoworld, I write every single week, comes out every Wednesday, stolen base roundup of the week before, where I do look at those matchups. I look at the hitters, the pitchers, the catchers and the pitchers that are being run on the most. And something crazy heading into this weekend, I didn't watch the game so closely yesterday, but the Sacramento A's have been yet to attempt a pickoff throw leading into the weekend this entire season. They're a team that has been running on. The Mets have not been running on them much this weekend because they haven't been getting on base. You need to get on first to steal second. But they're another team that has been targeted. The Rangers have been targeted heavily with their the catcher tandem of Kyle Higashioka and Jonah Heim. Neither of them are tremendously good guys that catch base stealers. Also with someone like Jacob deGrom pitching every 5th day. He's notorious for giving up tons of stolen bases. It's fun tracking this stuff, especially now with a lot of the new information we have on Baseball Savant to see, again, things like pickoff throws, to see things like hitters leads. There's a lot of fun little nitty gritty stuff to look at as stolen bases tick up across the league, and we just need more and more for our fantasy teams.
Yeah, there we go. I really like that. That's a really interesting stat that the A's have not attempted a pickoff throw. I'm gonna quote you on that one in an upcoming article, I think. All right, let's move over to the last piece of news before we jump into our large list of FAAB for the weekend. And that's Masyn Winn goes to the IL with back spasms. At first, it sounded like they were going to try to hope that he would avoid the IL, but he's in the IL. Where are you at on CJ Abrams there, Jason? Or not, sorry, Masyn Winn there, Jason? Because he's had some struggles kind of to start the year.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because he had such a nice bounce back year last year, coming off the very disappointing 2023. He's somebody that I have in 2 different leagues, and it's this back spasms. The only way to cure that is to stay off your feet for a while. And so again, hopefully this is not a lingering issue like it could be for Abrams. But these are 2 shortstops that were taken, and I would say I don't remember Wynn's ADP, but I would say it was somewhere in the early teens. So these are 2 front half of the draft shortstops that we have to do without right now, just adding to the theme of injury after injury after injury right now.
Yeah, Masyn Winn's ADP was 177 in main event league. So he did have a little bit of a drop coming into those kind of high stakes drafts. James, where are you at on Masyn Winn? Is this a guy that you would even hold on to if you have a crowded IL spot or IL list?
Truthfully, might be being a pessimist, but I'm not sure if I would. It definitely depends on the depth of your league. I know that coming in through draft season, Winn represented that last shortstop that was going to be able to be somewhat of a stalwart, someone who could play every day, someone you could even expect something like 15 from home runs and stolen bases. But between the way he started the season, between the Cardinals' commitment to only hitting him ninth in the order, and now between an injury that can linger like a back spasm, especially for a player that's so valuable. Defensively for the Cardinals, they don't really have another shortstop option on the even 40-man roster that's realistic. Like Thomas Saggese has been playing shortstop without Winn. Brendan does. I don't believe either of those guys are true major league shortstops. So I don't know if that means that the Cardinals would be more willing to rush Masyn Winn, or if that means they'll be more willing to hold him out to make sure nothing goes wrong here. But it's the disappointment, the lack of like really popping his skill set anyway, and then the fact that this is an injury that can linger. He's probably not someone I'm willing to hold through a back spasm like this.
Yeah, I think especially if you're in like a 10 or a 12 team league, I think you could
Definitely
pretty easily move on here from Masyn Winn. I will say, like, I don't think his job long term is in any jeopardy. So if you're in a depth of league where you're going, hey, like, you know, there isn't a lot on the wire, then I might hold on to him because I think he's going to play every day. He's such a good defender. And I mean, and the defense was great this year, even though the offense hadn't been so far. But yeah, in your shallower leagues, I think he's a fairly easy cut. In your deeper leagues, you probably have to hold on tight for a little bit and hope that he's back fairly quickly. Like I said before, the fact that they weren't necessarily rushing to throw him on the IL probably constitutes that he's going to be back maybe after a minimum stay. So
I would add one final note, Justin. It's like, you know, my favorite team runs Taylor Walls out there every day, so every shortstop looks better to me in that regard, because that guy just cannot hit. At least he can still pick it, but that's the issue for me. But I would say, well, one bit final news, because James had just mentioned it before we got on, is Joe Boyle's being called up today to pitch for Tampa. And I can say Tampa now because they're playing in Tampa, but against Atlanta. And so that will be interesting to see how that goes, because you mentioned on Friday's pod, Justin, how Atlanta has been one of the lowest scoring teams in baseball this year. And Joe Boyle, we know what Joe Boyle can do, but that's also what Atlanta hit a few home runs yesterday, and they could go hunting for fastballs, and that's what Joe Boyle likes to throw.
Yeah. Any thoughts on Joe Boyle there, James?
I mean, Joe Boyle is the exact kind of player that I will always be invested in, but will always disappoint me, because I love to see the 99 miles an hour and the wipeout slider, but I don't want to see the 3 walks and 4 strikeouts in 4 innings. So I do think, though, a situation like this where Joe Boyle, like we've seen the Rays just kind of be able to manufacture and manipulate pitchers like this before with great stuff just to wrangle it in somewhat. I don't know exactly what you're getting workload-wise. I know he's not going to be kind to your whip, but when you get to this point, a few weeks into the season, the free agent list gets a little bit picked over, and a guy with the stuff like Joe Boyle, you kind of have to give him a shot just to see what there is. And we have the blessing of being able to watch him on Sunday and then make our decisions on him after, rather than pray for a start on Tuesday before we actually know what's going on here.
Yeah, and the other thing is, the Rays bullpen has not been good this year. It has struggled. Yesterday they had to get 12 outs. Rasmussen looked great, but he only went 5, so the bullpen had to go 12, and so they've given up a lot of home runs out of that bullpen. There was a stat at one point yesterday: the Rays have been out homered 24-12 this season, and a lot of that comes off the bullpen. So they may need they may need Boyle to go a little longer than he probably should today, just to give that bullpen a rest, because it's had to do some lifting this week with that Angels series and all the home runs that team hit, and then what happened yesterday in the game.
Yeah, let's jump into FAAB. We're gonna start with some corner infielders and move away around the infield before we hit the pitchers for today. Let's start with Ty France, who's been playing regularly in Minnesota and playing fairly well. Available in a number of 10s and 12s and a few 15s. James, any interest in Ty France?
Definitely mild interest in Ty France. I'm not sure exactly where the power lies or where it winds up, but playing every day is a huge thing. And just the fact that he's not striking out, like the fact he's putting the ball in play so much, he's giving himself so many opportunities to contribute to anything. Like that's a step in the right direction. And corner infield gets pretty scarce pretty quickly. Very hard to find a meaningful replacement on the waiver wire that is, again, playing every single day. I'm not trusting 100 RBI Ty France to come walking back through that door, but I could trust 265 to 15 Ty France to come walking back through that door. I think that's valuable enough for getting him right now in a deeper league on the wire.
What about you, Jason?
So France is somebody that I want to see what happens as the weather warms up, because he obviously playing in Minneapolis, that's a problem. If the quality of contact's there, then let's see what the results happen as we start getting better weather and the cold's not suppressing offense as much as it was, because he was making good contact in spring training. And yeah, I made a trade for him in AL Labor. I traded Miguel Andujar straight up for Ty France 2 weeks ago. And in that situation, Ty France is somebody that I can't bench, whereas Miguel Andujar was somebody I could move up and down based on the labor rules. So that's why I was willing to make that sacrifice, because I was looking for a little more offense from somebody that was getting more playing time. So I do like France, and I want to say hopefully the weather heats up soon to help out that quality of contact, get some better run production results, because that Twins offense is on the struggle bus. I honestly don't know if Rocco Baldelli survives the month.
Yeah, it's been pretty brutal there in Minnesota. France, I think, is who he always has been, which is a guy who can make a lot of contact in the zone, which can lead to a good batting average, but does not elevate the ball enough to kind of tap into any sort of power that might be there. He's a guy who kind of tends to have high 40s to low 50s ground ball rate. And that is kind of staying true right now with a 47% ground ball rate and just a 35% fly ball rate. So I don't know how much juice you're really going to get from him, especially in a shallower format. But in a deeper league, he plays every day. If he's available in your league, I would go out and get him just for that batting average, because like you said, like league-wide batting average is down. Ty France is one of those guys that can kind of help you, boost up your team batting average if that is a problem. Let's move over to Gabriel Arias, who hit a home run, I think, yesterday, and eligible at second and third in most formats. Any interest in Gabriel Arias there, James?
Tons, just for that second, third eligibility. The fact you can get a guy like this who has at least mildly exciting tools, if not stretching into legitimately exciting tools that you could put in a middle infield, a corner infield spot, playing every day. I love getting like different player archetypes in different spots of my roster. The fact that a guy like Arias is the multi-eligibility, he probably will chip in a few steals, but you have a legitimate shot to stretch towards 20 homers. I can say that kind of trepidatiously. The swing and miss is still pervasive, but he's been one of the biggest bat speed risers in baseball this year. Swing right now about 76 miles an hour, which is, as of today, is the 95th percentile bat speed on Baseball Savant. So the fact that the power is being supported by the uptick in bat speed, the swing and miss is bad, but it's also always been bad. The Guardians need anyone like that to play. I know they talked him up a lot in spring training. I know they were very excited about him when they traded for him years ago. I want to say that was the Clevenger trade way back in the day that they made with the Padres where they got Arias. But he's someone that has these big, loud physical tools, which not many players the Guardians developed themselves actually had. So I feel like they are excited to get a guy like this who has true power upside to stick in that lineup every single day. And again, he has been playing every day with the dual eligibilities. That definitely puts him on. It should put him on almost every radar.
What about you, Jason? You in on Gabriel Arias at all?
Yeah, I would like to get on him for many of the same things James just said. It kind of feels like he's this year's David Fry or like Ernie Clement, out of somebody who gets the opportunity and makes the most out of the opportunity and surprises us with the production once he has the opportunity like this. And so when I see him, I was going through and like in the leagues this morning running some FAAB, like where is he available? Oh no, of course James Anderson has him in this league, and the smart guys already have him. So hopefully in some other leagues there's an opportunity to just try to get him and see what's out there before he makes that step up. Like I'll give you an example. I was surprised in one of my 12-team mix that Carbine Paris wasn't picked up last week. Yeah. And you and Paul talked about it a bit on Friday about like he's going to make a splash. I picked him up in one of my AL leagues right before he started getting hot, which is awesome. But it wasn't because I identified any kind of skill or read some story that he worked with Aaron Judge's hitting coach. It was literally, you're a body and you qualify at a spot that I need a player in. So I am picking you up. And that was the whole process behind that.
Yeah, for me, Arias, like I'm interested in him because he's playing every day, right? Like that makes a lot of sense. And the tools are allowed. The one tool that isn't loud is the hit tool, and that scares the crap out of me. Yes, he started off playing fairly well, but currently 66.7% zone contact is absolutely atrocious, and that's going to lead to a ton of strikeouts. And if you look at his swing and strike rate right now, it's at 21%. I just don't know if he's going to be able to sustain that playing time regularly if he continues to swing and miss the way he is. It's working right now. Maybe it'll work for a while. And I think this is very similar to the Kyrie Paris situation that Jason just mentioned, which is like, hey, ride the hot streak. If he's hot, he's playing, you're going to be happy. But I think this will come crashing down unless he kind of improves that in-zone contact rate quite a bit, because typically when I talk about in-zone contact, 80% is that threshold between like, is this guy really a major leaguer or is he not, right? When you're below 70%, you are not a major leaguer. And that is super, super concerning for me from just a straight like hit tool perspective.
Yeah, he's a major leaguer defensively though, and that is something that with a little bit of power in that lineup, his 2 home runs he's hit now on back-to-back days heading into Sunday, both opposite field. And we're talking about how much the cold weather has affected hitting. Cleveland was cold this weekend, and he put 2 balls out against one was Bubic, and I don't remember who hit it off on Saturday, but just being able to do that in a team that can't often do things like that, just the way Stephen Vogt talks about him, it's like, this guy's not leaving the lineup until he makes them take him out. So I think that's a fun little caveat for Arias right now.
Yeah, and
there's another example.
Go ahead, Jason.
I was gonna add that's another reason James brought up a good point there. It's like the defense. That's why it's one of the reasons why we're seeing the league-wide batting average where it is, because teams are clearly making a decision to put quality defenders in spot and willing to live with the offensive penalty on that, because the shift was taken away, that they put a little more restriction on it, but it feels like defense at the end of the day is winning out, and that's why we're seeing these questionable bats get more playing time, because they're making a difference in the field.
And I was going to mention that like the Oppo home runs is really interesting, because in right field you have that wind tunnel in Cleveland, right? They took those seats out. I think I mentioned this earlier on in draft season. Like they took those seats out and it created a little bit of wind tunnel out to right. So a right-handed bat being able to go Oppo that way is actually fairly valuable in this context. And to you guys' point, like, who else on this roster are they going to play there? They've got Daniel Schneemann. They've got Angel Martinez. Like, those aren't necessarily super enticing options to kind of take that spot from him. And he is playing every day. So, like I said, I would ride this, but I do kind of expect it to fall apart here at some point if he continues to kind of swing and miss as much as he has been. Moving on, we've got Thomas Saggese, who's I totally mispronounced that, who is going to be playing with Masyn Winn out. Any interest there, Jason?
Saggese, Thomas Saggese. You can see me pinching as I'm talking. The interest is yes, because this was actually somebody that I had in my bold prediction series in 2024 for the Cardinals. So I had him there. He didn't get to make it up, but I had him in that series. And then and right now the Cardinals offense, before the injuries, they've been scoring runs. They've been one of the better offenses with things. So I am intrigued enough to 15 team mixed to take a shot with the skill set as long as Winn's out. He would definitely be in my waterfall if I was a Winn owner and needed to replace him. So I've had some interest. Just wish it would have happened last year when I was asking for it instead of now when I didn't have him anywhere.
Yeah.
What about you, James?
Saggese's also always been a hit over power guy, but so far this season, he's hit 2 hardest balls his entire career. He had never hit a ball over 109 miles an hour before. So far already, he has 2 in something like 14 or 15 batted ball events. And it's 109 max exit velocity, still not exactly enticing or super impressive power, but the fact that there's more power than no power for someone that, while never hitting the ball very hard, did the 20 homers at AAA last year. And I think it's a good hit tool. We talked about earlier how much teams are struggling to maintain batting average right now. Saggese, for that Cardinals team, that just they live on base. Every single person on that team right now has been getting on base at will. It's been turning over that lineup. They can't win games because the pitching is still atrocious, as I'm sure any Cardinals fan knows, but they're scoring runs. They're turning around that batting order. There's a lot of fun and talented hitters in there, and I think Saggese is someone that I'm just worried about the shortstop thing, because he's not exactly a shortstop. So I wonder how much that, if at all, that affects him. I know he did play there a lot in AAA last year, but for his career, it's been more of a second, third base situation. So I wonder if that makes if some poor defense, if he does play poor, maybe he does well there, but poor defense kind of takes down his at-bats is something I'm afraid of. But that also means he's going to be playing every day, at least mostly every day, because I don't think Brendan Donovan can play enough shortstop to be a valuable defensive player, major league player there. So I'm interested in Saggese very much so, especially with those 2 big batted balls.
Yeah,
and I'm wondering if it's. No, I was just wondering if it was an arm strength issue with Saggese, because the thing is, going from Masyn Winn to anybody in arm strength is going to look bad. But the fact they were playing him at third base and shortstop in Memphis last year certainly helps. But if he's not a shortstop, we know Pedro Pages is not a second baseman, but he played second base this week.
Just out there having fun with this Cardinals team this year. Just seeing what happens. Miles Michaels every fifth day. Why not?
I think that brings up the point is they don't have the bodies in the infield that can play shortstop, right? This is why they had to play Pages at second base, is because they started running out of bodies a little bit. I think that he's going to have playing time as long as Winn is out. So if you're looking for just a natural Winn replacement, it makes a lot of sense. I think as soon as Winn comes back, though, Winn takes that spot back over. And now they have multiple guys who can play second base in Donovan, and they just activated Nolan Gorman as the corresponding move for Masyn Winn. So I don't know how long the playing time will be there, but until that playing time kind of dries up once Winn comes back, I think he will be playing every day. And I think this is kind of a guy who's an accumulator. He is only really valuable when he is kind of playing every day. He doesn't do anything particularly well, but he does a number of things, fairly well. So kind of like a Marcus Semien light type of dude. So I think that this is a guy you can kind of, use in the short term. I don't think there's a ton of long-term value here, though.
I have a question for you guys. Yeah. With Nolan Gorman back, who, if anybody, does he unseat for playing time in that Cardinals lineup? Because
I don't think he does.
It just seems like he's on the bench, because if Saggese's playing short, Donovan's playing second, and then the outfield's Newbar, Scott, and Walker, where does DH is Burleson? Where does he wind up playing, if at all?
I don't think he does. I think he is just infield depth at this point of his career.
I agree.
So yeah, unfortunately, but this is the problem. If you can't make consistent contact, you're going to lose playing time, and that's what's happened to Nolan Gorman. When we were just talking about Arias, right? That is kind of a Nolan Gorman kind of profile, right? A guy who's got power and can put it to use at times, but he struggles to make in-zone contact consistently. And when you do that, you're going to strike out too much and you're going to lose playing time. Mm-hmm. And so I think that is kind of the unfortunate narrative around Nolan Gorman, is that he just cannot make enough contact, especially in the zone. Moving on, we've got Chase Meidroth, who has been recalled. He is going to be a big bidder, person bid on this weekend. James, where are you out on him?
I love Meidroth. I covered that game Friday night for Rotoworld, the White Sox-Red Sox game, where the White Sox trounced the Red Sox and Sean Newcomb. And a lot of it was led by Meidroth. He scored the first run of the game after drawing a walk. He scored a third run after the game after hitting a single. His mastery of the strike zone has always been something that's talked about in these circles. See, the way he performed in the minor leagues, always one of these stat data darlings without the scouting grades to match. But he was so in command in every single at bat. It looked so professional for someone who was making their first major league game. He had tons of family in the crowd. There's probably a reasonable chance that over the next week, if he keeps this up to any degree, this on-base ability, he winds up as the first or second hitter in this White Sox lineup. And if that happens, then suddenly we're looking at a true accumulator, someone that could be a monster with scoring runs, getting on base, and making contributions to this White Sox lineup that we never even could have thought imaginable a few weeks ago, based on who else is in there. But I'm really in on Meidroth. I think he's very exciting.
Jason, I know you're on him too, because you drafted him everywhere. Talk about Meidroth.
I did. I took him. I'm telling you guys off air. I took him in every league possible, the draft and holds and AL only, and for some of the reasons James just outlined. The command of the strike zone, fantastic. White Sox were begging for a leadoff hitter. I was looking for Meidroth to make the team out of camp. And so when I looked at terrible team that's going to have a lot of opportunities, who's the best high-level talent that this team has to get up on the offense? And he was at the top of the list with this. And so the fact that he's made the team now, you can see the knock against him was that he doesn't have the great exit velocity. But if he could be a slappy and work it all over the field and wait for the pitch in the zone because he has that command of the zone, that's ideal. And bad team, whatever, he should be out there playing every single day. What I've seen of him in Charlotte, he was the best hitter on the field. And so happy that he's up, happy that I get to activate the shares that I have of him everywhere. I did drop him in one league only because I had 5 IL spots, 5 IL on my NFBC roster, so I had to drop him. And I was hoping to get him back on the cheap this weekend before the call-up, but that is not happening now. So I'll have to let somebody else enjoy him in one league.
Justin, I gave you that A stat before with the pickoffs. I have another crazy one about Meidroth. In AAA this season, he had a 100% zone contact rate.
Yeah,
100. No misses in the strike zone.
I was gonna say it. I was gonna say it. Like it's like that. This dude can hit. Like this dude can flat out hit. And these are the type of dudes I love because when you make as much contact in the zone, what you're doing is giving yourself opportunities to get lucky. Right? You're putting the ball in play and you're putting the onus on the defense to get you out. And Meidroth is one of these guys, right? Like that he can just put the ball in play and he can walk. We're gonna see this guy on base a ton. Now, there isn't like a ton of power, really very much power, or a ton of speed. So it's gonna be a little bit empty of a line, but I do agree that like there's no reason he shouldn't be hitting at the top of the lineup. And I think he will hit at the top of the lineup here at some point. And I think he can accumulate. Now to the accumulation on a bad team, which hurts a little bit, but especially in your 15 team leagues. And I think in a lot of 12s, like this guy's going to make a lot of sense as a glue guy, especially we were just talking about batting averages are down across the league.
Bingo.
His batting average will not be down. If he hits less than like 280, I'm going to be really, really surprised. And I think there is a world in which he hits 300 plus this season and just gets on base an absolute crap ton. So I think if you're looking for batting average right now, especially I think Meidroth, you can't do much better than him because he's going to be available in just about every format this weekend to be picked up.
Yeah. Yep, and I forgot about another piece of the process about why I was targeting him. Remember, he was one of the key pieces of the Garrett Crochet trade. So it was Meidroth and it was Kyle Teal and then a couple other guys. But that's the other thing is I felt he was going to be up sooner rather than later. The crazy part, I've been to a couple of Knights games this year, and Kyle Teal is DH'd in both of them, which really sucks. Like I saw a game against Norfolk, and it was Kyle Teal and Sammy Basillo, and they were both DHing. I'm like, really? I came here to see one of them catch, and they had to both DH. So but the great Basillo's doing it. He's 20 years old in AAA. That's like awesome.
Meidroth also played shortstop on Saturday, so that's interesting that the White Sox, with a gaping hole at shortstop, will be trying seemingly to shoehorn him in there and see what he has. Second base in his first game on Friday, and then shortstop on Saturday.
Yeah, that is really interesting. I didn't think he was going to be a good enough fielder to play shortstop. So it'd be interesting to see how that works out. But again, like the White Sox, how much do they really care?
No,
right? They don't necessarily need to win, right? This is part of the rebuilding time. So like putting him at shortstop might hurt some of their pitchers, but hey, you get that extra, you'll take that extra eligibility if he's able to pick that up. So moving along, I'm gonna throw up Adel Amador, who was called up by the Rockies, move him up the list since we are talking kind of infield options right now. Jason, where are you at on Amador? He's a guy with some kind of former prospect pedigree, but I don't think has really ever quite lived up to the hype.
So speaking of teams that shouldn't care and should be doing these types of things, yes, getting Zac Veen and getting Amador up. This is what the Rockies should be doing from day one. And it's always frustrating to see them roll out the Nick Martinis of the world and do this kind of crap. But this is what they should be doing because that team's out of contention as well with that. But I would definitely give Amador a chance. Obviously, Paul said the sentence the other day on the Friday episode. Coors doesn't make bad hitters good. It makes good hitters better. And Amador has the opportunity, maybe as a stream option with that. You could see some of the talent, but then again, there were people that were just absolutely frowning on Ezekiel Tovar because of the absolutely couldn't walk and was striking out too much, but he made it work last year. And I was down on him this year for those same reasons because I don't feel it's a sustainable model. But yeah, let's give Amador and Veen a chance and see what's possible there. But I want to see the Rockies do more of this instead of throwing out these veterans and these has-beens and bring up these kids and see what they can do.
I feel like this is kind of a bit of a changing of that mindset for the Rockies, just getting both of these guys up at once. And also Amador, he's been very bad in his little cup of coffee in the majors. I think what was that last year, 10, 15 games. He's still only 22 years old. That was just probably a thing of the Rockies probably shouldn't have called him up when they actually did. But now being up here, switch hitter, makes tons of contact, especially in the zone. It just seems like a fun little guy that is going to be second baseman. He's probably going to steal a couple bags. Just catch a little Coors Lightning in a bottle. I don't think it's going to be great, but I can see it being pretty good for Amador. I see that definitely a world where that happens.
Yeah, he's due to makes a lot of contact, and while he isn't like extremely powerful or extremely fast, like he puts the speed he does have to use. He stole 35 bases in the minors last year, so I think there is an opportunity for him to kind of get some sneaky stolen bases. Play hopefully somewhat regularly. I know that part of the reason to bring him up is Ezekiel Tovar is dealing with a hip issue right now, and they just don't know that he's like how he's going to be able to play kind of on like an everyday basis. But like right now, they're running out Kyle Farmer at second base. Like they can put Amador in that position and give him opportunities there.
Farmer hit third.
Hence the veteran has been comment right there. That's where I was focused. It's like Kyle Farmer has one job: play against lefties and give somebody a day off, not start.
When he played his one of the days last week, I think it was Thursday, he hit third. He hit third for the Colorado Rockies in a real Major League Baseball game. I was alarmed to see that lineup. I'm happy that they are going youth here. I was also very excited about Veen. I think Veen is someone that looks like he could be a lot of fun. What do you guys think about Veen after now seeing him play a few games in the Major League level at the end this week?
This is why James is good, because he that was a transition like a pro right there into the next topic. We do have Zac Veen. I'm not as big on Veen as I think other people are in the industry. I feel like there is still some of this like added prospect hype around him when he really hasn't done much and hasn't really been able to stay healthy in the minor leagues. Starting so far, he's played 5 games. He's striking at a 30% rate. Like, I'm not necessarily worried about that. I just don't know if like the bids we're going to see this weekend are going to be massive. You're going to see people blow not just triple digits in $1,000 FAAB leagues. You're going to see them blow $200-$300 on Veen. I think that is a massive mistake on a guy who's fairly unproven and really hasn't had, I think, the seasoning that his track record in the minor league shows because he's missed so much time with injury. I'm a little bit more tepid on Veen. What about you, Jason?
Somebody is going to be Brenton Doyle and Nolan Jones this season for the Rockies. Every year, somebody steps up and does it. The skill set's there for Veen to do it. I thought it may be Toglia this year, who's off to a slow and terrible start. But the Rockies will provide somebody the opportunity to do it. And every year, somebody has risen up to the challenge of come out of nowhere and have a big year. I'm not saying that Veen's a nobody, obviously the prospect status, but we weren't projecting this type of thing for him. Somebody's going to do it. The skills are there. The opportunity should be there if the Rockies are realistic about what they really are as a team. I will not be one of those guys blowing triple digits, but after seeing some of the bids this past weekend on some guys in main event, wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, I'm going to promise you there are going to be some $300 bids that get thrown out this week on Zac Veen and NFBC. Now, obviously, if you're not an NFBC, like you don't necessarily need to do that in order to get him. But like I said, I'm a little bit more tepid on him. James, where are you at on Zac Veen?
I think Veen has a couple kind of small things going for him where at least puts him in range, like Jason said, to be the next Nolan Jones, to be the next Brenton Doyle. First off, just being a lefty hitter. Same with Amador being a switch hitter. Like there's no genuine platoon advantage. I'm sure Veen will sit against the lefties, but the fact that we're getting regular every single day playing time in Coors Field from Zac Veen's a great start. And with Veen and Meidroth, forgot to mention it before, but Thursday was a pretty important day in the minor league calendar. It was the end of where players can be called up to be eligible for the PPI, which is in the new CBA.
Yes.
That is the prospect playing incentive. I'm not sure what the second P stands for, but it's just for a guy to win, to compete for one of the awards, most likely Rookie of the Year, if not MVP or Cy Young, as the CBA stipulates. To be eligible to get your team a compensatory draft pick, you have to be on the roster by 2 weeks after opening day, which was this Thursday. So with Veen and Meidroth being called up at that time, that is two teams who would definitely love an extra asset in the Rockies and the White Sox, saying, let's see if this guy can compete for Rookie of the Year. So I think that we're going to see a lot of play appearances, at bats for both of those players. I think that's an important piece of the Nexus here. It had me really hoping that Nick Kurtz was getting the call up for the series against the Mets. That, of course, did not happen, but it was an interesting date. I think it's interesting. These are the two guys that were called up as that deadline struck.
Yeah,
it was kind of surprising
for prospect. PPI stands for Prospect Promotion Incentive. So
promotion incentive, yeah.
I agree with you, Jason. Kurtz, that's a good call because it was Rooker actually played a game in the outfield, so it was like kind of a little bit like, oh, if Rooker's going to play in the outfield, then maybe they can move Soderstrom or Kurt. You know, it looks like they were trying to get there, but they didn't. So it's like that's the kind of the part we're stuck on. But Kurtz impressed us at the AFL, and it'd be interesting to see when he does make it up because he's just tearing the ball up in AAA.
Yeah, they're also out there. Interacting much more with the Sacramento Waves this weekend as the Mets have been playing there, and Ron Darling and Gary Cohen have been taking every single opportunity to rip the management that set this major league team into a minor league park. And they were talking about the fact that the designated hitters in Sacramento don't have a place to swing and warm up because there's no tunnel, there's no cage underneath that's connected to the dugout like all major league parks. So there was a shot of Starling Marte going across the field with his bat in between innings so we can get some swings in between innings. And I wonder if that could be something that's loosely tied to a slow start for a guy like Brent Rooker, who doesn't have the same level of, I don't even know, it might just be like literally being warm going into every single at bat because it's a walk across the field to take your hacks. Not the same thing as just walking underneath the tunnel like every other major league team would. There was a situation yesterday where the injury cart ran out of function, and they had to push it up the line, and as Jose Siri's writhing in pain on the ground after fouling a ball off his leg. It's been a strange couple of days watching the Mets play there, but I wonder about that DH situation in Sacramento.
That's an awesome point. That's kind of crazy that a stadium like that doesn't have that, because I know one year in Tout Wars we drafted at the Staten Island baseball stadium, which was at the time a short season team, and they had a batting cage underneath the bleachers because we were in there. Nick Pollock was throwing pitches, I was up there throwing pitches, like we were in there taking BP hacks, and they had a full thing, and that was a short season stadium that had a full cage underneath under the bleachers. So it's kind of shocking to see a place like Sutter Field that doesn't have one. But that's an awesome point. It's like, okay, I guess get in a phone booth and try to practice your swing or get out in the I don't know what you do.
They have the cage, but similar to that, where it's just not connected to the locker room and the clubhouse and the dugout, where the players will have to walk across. But again, that was the shot that had Starling Marte coming across the infield in between innings before his at bat because he was swinging during the other half inning on the other side of the field in the cage.
What did they do? Build it inside of a hill? Like, what's under the bleachers? Did they just dig up some dirt? That's strange because, like I said, it was all underneath in Staten Island. It was connected to the dugout. It was like there was the Staten Island Yankee dugout, and and then the clubhouse, and then the cage. It was all right there behind the scenes.
Yeah, that was actually a really fun weekend. We got to go and do BP in that park or in that cage. Yeah, that's really interesting. I hadn't heard that. That is, and I do wonder if maybe that does have something to do with Rooker's struggles. Rooker striking out at a 29% rate, hitting 200, 246, 431 so far. He's got the 4 home runs, but only 8 RBIs go along with those 4 home runs so far. So a little bit of a bummer there for people who drafted Rooker. Let's move on to the next guy. Oscar Gonzalez got called up, might be playing a little bit with some people being nicked up in San Diego. Any interest there, James?
Just again for the playing time in a good offense, but it's hard to continue to be excited about Oscar Gonzalez at this point in his career. Like, it's just been pervasive swing and miss. He's never been willing to draw a walk in his entire life. It seems like it's just not. I can't. It's hard to be excited. This is third organization now in the last calendar year. It's not. Maybe again, deep league playing time, mono leagues. You need someone who's going to take some plate appearances, but it's very hard to be excited about this guy at this point.
What about you, Jason?
Ditto. And as you guys said on the Friday pod, that San Diego lineup has gotten thin in a hurry with all these injuries. And so, yikes. That also trickles down to the pitchers and the win. But that San Diego lineup went from looking pretty good to looking like the El Paso Chihuahuas quickly.
At least the back half of it, because Fernando is sensational. But once you get past 5, it's like, oh, my God, where'd you find these guys?
Yes. When he got hurt, I was all like, oh, no, we're going to lose another guy. But it seems like
thankfully he came back.
Yeah, it seems like he's going to be fine. Hit another home, or I think he hit home runs in back-to-back games after the injuries, so it seems like he's going to be fine. I just don't know if Gonzalez is going to be able to find enough playing time. I also don't understand why, like, they bring up a guy like Oscar Gonzalez, who wasn't even on the 40-man roster, and you've got Tirso just sitting there in the minor leagues mashing right now. But I think outside of your deepest leagues, because he's probably on a short side platoon, he's probably not that useful for most fantasy leagues outside of the deepest of leagues. A guy that might be in the outfield that might be interesting is Jake Myers, who's been kind of turning it on late. And the Astros are finally turning it on a little bit. Any interest there in Jake Myers, Jason?
Yes, absolutely. He's a good example of what I was saying earlier about teams prioritizing defense. If you looked at the Astros, we knew the outfield was going to be a question mark this year, losing Tucker and what they're going to go. So Myers was an offseason target for me because defensively he has it. And then he also had some speed skills. I knew he was going to hit the bottom of the lineup. I never thought that was going to be anything. But Myers is somebody that I picked up in a few AL leagues. Looking at that, I know the market was kind of zagging towards McCormick and whatnot, but Myers was somebody that I was going on. And defensively, he's going to stay in the lineup because he can go get those fly balls. And so, yes, interest there. But again, as a bottom half of the lineup hitter, skills-wise, the shallower the league, the less interested I'm in. But 15s, yeah. 12s, maybe, depending on where I need. 10s, I'm going to look for somebody in the upper half of the lineup.
Yeah, this Myers this year there's a real chance he turns in like one of those nice classic, like 2016, 2017 Kevin Kiermaier seasons where you just look up, you're like, did Jake Myers just have 500 plate appearances? But he's that good in the outfield, and the rest of the Astros outfield is that bad as he is. When he started the year, he was the only outfielder that was actually in the outfield with two other infielders flanking him. But you look at probably 20 steals and tons of plate appearances. You could do a lot worse than that at this point.
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
No, this is. Please don't interpret this as a victory lap, but you got Jake Myers doing what he's doing where he was being taken, and you have Pete Crow Armstrong doing what he's not doing where he was taken. Just saying.
Not bad.
Did you see the report on Armstrong that they offered him a $75 million extension?
Yeah.
To buy out his RBers, and he said no.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
No. Like Eric Hinsky told Evan Longoria back in the day, never turn down your first $1 million. That's why Evan Longoria signed his first 6-year, $18 million contract. Never turn that man. If wow, Pete Armstrong could be like sitting in Iowa later this year going, why did I turn down that contract? Why did I turn down that contract?
Yeah, making $10,000.
It's really interesting though, because like you look kind of the underlying numbers. The underlying numbers on Armstrong are pretty decent. It's actually he's got an 88% zone contact right now. His swing strike rate is just 11%. I'm wondering what the major issue is here.
Just gave you an article idea, Justin. There you go. Just gave you an article idea.
I wonder if this is actually a buy low opportunity. I mean, obviously, people who invested in him invested fairly high in him, but he may end up on kind of my buy low article this week because I feel like hitting 197, like he shouldn't be hitting 197 right now. Like,
so as you say all of that. As you say all of that, I would encourage you as you do that, go back and look at Lawrence Butler about this time last year.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Very similar. Like he was walking. The only thing you could say positive about Lawrence Butler this time at the end of April last year is he was walking. And as Joe Madden taught me, walking is hitting. And if you're walking, you'll eventually be hitting. Butler did eventually do that. So that's why I'm saying I'm not running this whole victory lap because I was very anti-PCA this winter.
I was too. But that's why
he's walking.
These underlying numbers.
If he's walking and you're saying what you're saying about him, like if you do write that article by low, go back and look at
the problem is he's not walking. He's walking at like a 7% rate. It's but the defense will keep PCA in the lineup. Like that to me, and so you're going to get speed from him. He's going to play every day. I think he might turn this around if the underlying numbers kind of stabilize.
And this is a weird spin zone for that contract extension offer. The fact that the Cubs were even willing to go to him with a contract like that for how little production he's had at the major league level shows how highly they value him, shows how much respect they have for him and his game, what he could do at least half the side of the field. So it would have to get bad for him to wind up down in Iowa, and there's just I don't know the center fielder that winds up getting those reps over him. It seems like he's going to be him.
When you get that elite type of defense, like I remember when Tampa Bay gave Kiermaier his contract extension, but he had at least hit a little bit to get that, and then he stopped hitting. But the elite guys that can go gap to gap, center field, come front, go forward, and go backwards and cover as much ground. Like PCA, there's as we've said a couple of times on there, some teams are prioritizing that defensive skill and willing to take the offensive hit because of what they're doing in the field. That said, for fantasy purposes, PCA is nowhere near where people wanted him to be right now.
Yeah, that's the problem. Absolutely. The price winds up being the problem, not exactly what the player's potential could still be.
Yeah, I think that is exactly the right point. Let's talk about a couple catchers. Dillion Dingler's been dinging the ball quite a bit, playing a fair amount in Detroit. Any interest there, James?
Bias up front. I love Dingler. A fellow Buckeye like myself, in school at the same time as him for some time, saw him play a lot of baseball, really liked him coming out of the draft, mostly because I was like, this guy rocks. I got to see him in person a bunch. But he has a major opportunity in Detroit. Jake Rogers is not exciting, and he was hurt. Not sure if he is still out, but Dingler's been playing good defense. That pitching staff seems like they enjoy throwing to him. There seems to be a good rapport there with a lot of guys that came up through the minor leagues around the same time as Dingler, so definitely some experience there catching. Guy like Reese Olson, some other Casey Mize pitchers in that staff. And also, we're seeing legitimate power pop from the number 2 catchers that you're not really ever going to see. And something that for someone that's making a lot of contact while also striking out a ton is kind of a strange thing right now. I'd like to see him draw a walk. Once he draws a walk, I'll be especially in. But until then, it's just as a catcher, too, worth a flyer. See if you can figure it. He's also older. He's 26 years old already. There's no reason for him not to be playing at the major league level and contributing based on his minor league production. So get him in there, catcher 2, see if he could continue to catch this lightning in a bottle. But it could definitely fall apart.
Yeah, Dingler's interesting because, like you said, he is striking out quite a bit right now. Currently, he has a 31% strikeout rate, but he's making a ton of contact in the zone. 91% for a catcher is insane, and swing strike rate is only 8%. It's because he's playing passive right now. His zone swing rate is just 61%. For context, last year in the majors, it was at almost 70%, and it was 71% in the minors. So I think he just needs to get a little bit more aggressive inside of the zone, which for someone who doesn't have any walks,
it's a weird
it's a really, and this is one of these things, I think I talked about last week with Paul. I was like, these underlying stats, don't go too deep into them. Right, you want to track them and kind of look at them and see okay, what is kind of going on. But this is why watching the game is so important, because a lot of these underlying stats are going to change dramatically over the course of the next few weeks. Jason, where are you at on Dingler?
Love him. I would say we draft XFL in November at AFL, and I drafted Dingler as my second catcher back then in that 15-team keeper league because I liked what I saw and didn't feel that Jake Rogers would be a long time deterrent to that situation. And so happy to see him up. And skills wise, you're obviously, when you get to catcher, you're always looking for some type of offensive upside, and Dingler has the skills to be able to do that. So again, happy he's up. He was my plan B in a lot of other leagues. I only got him in one other league because I emphasized getting better catching this year. I didn't want to dollar catchers, and so I invested a little more in catchers than I normally do. But if I hadn't gotten the guys that I was targeting, Dingler was my next guy. I wish I would have had more shares, but I believe I only have 2 in my 10 leagues.
I like when a player has a weird play discipline like this. I always immediately go to Robert Orr of Baseball Prospectus's shiny app, where Seager is listed out in percentiles for every player in the year. And despite this strangeness with Dingler's profile, with lots of swing and miss, not much swing and miss, but also tons of strikeouts, his Seager is actually above league average in the 54th percentile. So that's at least something there. There probably is a bit more of a push and pull he could figure out, but get, like you were saying, Justin, about when to swing and when not to swing. But it's enough power, enough playing time to make any second catcher extremely interesting.
Yeah, I agree. Let's talk about another guy who might be a second catcher, Pedro Pages, who we talked about a little bit earlier on the podcast because he just kind of randomly had to go play second base. He's going to be getting a fair amount of playing time with Ivan Herrera on the IL, and probably a pretty popular pickup this week. Jason, any interest in Pages?
So I would say, if I don't know, because again, I'm running this with no video and I'm trying not to take system resources up on a laptop. I don't know what the Cardinals stolen base rate allowed, how much they're allowing, but Pages is the better of the two between Herrera and Pages on controlling the running game. I remember looking at this into the offseason because I was really high on Herrera coming into the year. Like if I could have come out of a draft with Herrera and Dingler, I would have been thrilled. And Herrera was playing well until he got hurt, and he could be out there saying 4 to 6 weeks with this. When I was listening to the Baseball HQ podcast and Dr. James Ferretti was talking about this type of issue, they're saying like 4 to 6 weeks on this. And so Pages is the better thrower, and so if the Cardinals pitchers have been allowing more stolen bases and whatnot, that could be a hidden benefit from Pages getting more playing time. But he should be your everyday catcher right now, with Pozo being the day game after a night game and Sunday day game type of situation catching.
Pozo came into that game that where Winn got hurt, and then Pages had to go to second base when Saggese went to shortstop, and then he went 3 for 4 down the stretch of that game, had a huge double off Varinola to send the Cardinals ahead, which is a funny situation. But Pages is like, we're talking about Dingler having these fun traits for your catcher too. Pages is the opposite. Pages, to steal the oatmeal word from DVR and Enos Arias, he is the oatmeal second catcher. He's going to play. You're going to get a middling batting average with middling power. Once in a while, you get a run an RBI, and you take that to the bank because you're very excited about it. But that's kind of what Pedro Pages is.
And to answer your question there, Jason, St. Louis is exactly 15th, so exactly middle of the road in terms of stolen bases allowed this season. They are currently tied with the Angels and the Phillies there. So, I kind of agree. Like, it's kind of boring, but I think he's going to play quite a bit while Herrera is on the IL. So, you could do worse. Like, I don't know that there's much here in terms of like massive fantasy value outside of the fact that he's going to be playing regularly. I don't think he's going to actively hurt you, which a lot of second catchers can do, right? Like, I think this is a guy who can hit for average. He's shown the ability to hit well in the zone. There just isn't much to go along with that. So if you're looking for a second catcher in a deeper league that doesn't hurt you, I think Pages makes sense. In your 10s and 12s, I think you're looking for something a little bit more, even in your 2-catcher 10s and 12s. Mm-hmm. All right, let's move over to pitching. Top prospect Chase Dollander made his debut recently and is going to be someone who is targeted in some leagues. Now, he is a Rockies pitcher, which means there are some leagues where they're just going to completely ignore him. James, where are you at on Dollander?
I'm perplexed by Dollander. This is kind of like testing all of us a lot of how much we're going to actually buy into a Rockies pitcher. Credit to the people that did before last week, because he had his first road start and he dominated. I think it was 7 or 8 strikeouts. He looked fantastic doing it. The fastball sat 98. There are so many 12-team leagues I'm in where I will hold Ryan McMahon for the entire season every single year, and I will stream him in Coors Field. And I'm wondering if Dollander right now is becoming the reverse, the hold the Rocky pitcher and stream him away from Coors, because this stuff it pops off the page, like between the cutter, the fastball, the curveball, like as somewhat used for changeup. Like, he has every single thing that you think someone would need. Maybe not to dominate inside of Coors Field, but at least to be a plus pitcher with a plus strikeout rate outside of Coors Field. And it's hard to look away from that while also understanding I still probably will never want to start him ever at home, forever.
Jason?
Yeah, pretty much the exact same thing, because maybe he can be what German Marquez was at peak before his injury, where let's start him on the road, let's get what we can. But the difference between German Marquez then and Chase Dollander now is the Rockies were at least competitive back then and could get wins on the road. Yeah. You're still looking at a team that gets 1 to 2 wins per week, and that's really the challenge with taking Dollander. So. Shallower leagues, I'm still out because I don't want to waste this roster spot trying to stream things. But that's the double challenge is, sure, you can go on the road, but this is still a team. If they win 3 games in a week, it's a miracle.
This Dollander is like the first Rockies starting pitcher that I'm actually like entertaining, like having ever really drafted. Like, I was never in on the Marquez kind of train. I am super tempted, and I did actually trade for him in a dynasty league prior to his call up. In a league where I'm kind of on the cusp of finishing a rebuild. I'm still kind of rebuilding, but I'm not going to be competing this year, but I might next year. The skills are amazing, and like, you just wish a different team had drafted him because ending up in Colorado is just a terrible spot because, as Paul would say, pretty much every week during that Marquez run, Coors is undefeated. Like, it's just so hard for team or for players, pitchers to figure out Coors. And so I think this really comes down to a team construct left. Like, can you afford to just stream a guy for his road starts, right? And knowing that you're probably not going to get wins even on the road because the Rockies are so bad. So you're talking about a guy who at best is a 3-category contributor for 50% of his starts. That's really, really difficult unless you have deep benches that aren't decimated by injury. So it really kind of depends. But I think like in 10s, 12s, and 15s, I want this guy if he can fit into that construct because I do think the talent is really, really good.
There's also a bit of a tiny pitch mix hurdle that Dollander is going to have to climb over. His fastball is electric, like we said, very low arm angle, under 30-degree arm angle, almost like half a side armor who's still able to get up to 98 miles an hour, which is kind of remarkable. But it is just that one fastball. His color, which I talked about, is more of, I love how color distinctions happen because like some colors are kind of like cousins to the fastball, where some colors wind up being like baby sliders, where Dollander's color is more of a baby slider, and he had trouble throwing it in that and his curveball in the zone so far through his 2 starts. We're seeing a home run problem. A combination of a home run problem and pitching in Coors Field, again, makes him unplayable there, but there could definitely still be some ugly ones on the road, despite the high strikeout upside, because unless he can find a way to get that color in the zone more often, or even maybe zone that curveball more, the fastball, when he misses a spot, which the stuff is much better than the command, will get hit out, and will get hit out probably frequently, as it did for the 2 solo home runs he gave up in his last start. So that's just something to watch with Dollander if there's any other development of a pitch or a game plan change with the way he's using that fastball in the strike zone.
There we go. All right, let's move on to David Festa, who was called up this week and really disappointed everybody, right? Everybody was clamoring for Zebby Matthews. I talked about this on Friday's pod. And we got David Festa. Not that David Festa is a bad pitcher by any stretch of the imagination. Like, James, where are you at on Festa? Like, this was a guy I was really excited about. I know Jason was really excited about during draft season, didn't make the rotation, and now everybody seems disappointed he's up.
I love Festa. Festa is someone who, as a Jersey guy, he's a Jersey guy. My grandma's best friend's son trained him when he was in high school, was one of his private instructors, which is kind of a funny connection I have to Festa. But I had this running joke with Eric Samolsky. Me and him do the Rotoworld live stream every single Monday, where all he was talking about was Zebby Matthews. I was like, "Hey man, it might be Festa. Don't forget about Festa. They might call up Festa." And of course, they call up Festa. And again, the problem with Festa wasn't Festa. It was the fact that he got pulled after 60 pitches. And I think that was the part that I wish they would have told us. So like, he's going to be working on a pitch count, because the stuff is incredible. The fastball is great. The new sinker 2-seamer he showed off in the spring looks good. The slider's awesome. He has commanded that changeup. Like, he can be a really, really good pitcher, and it wouldn't even be close to a surprise. And they did this with him last year too, where they get very afraid of letting him face that lineup a third time. The Twins are very steadfast with him. And, I don't know if they will do this with Zebby as well, but they were just very specific there. He's not facing hitters the third time, and even as in times where he's looked good, and he looked really good in that first start, bang, out of the game. No opportunity to kind of get deeper, get that win, possibly even get a quality start. So a situation like that will always tape down his fantasy value, but stuff-wise, he is very, very, very exciting.
What about you, Jason? I know you were a big Festa guy in draft season.
Yeah, I'm going to pull a Kanye and say I'm going to let y'all finish, but David Festa is the best in the world. But in all seriousness, I have to drop after I talk about Festa here and let you guys wrap it up. The thing about Festa versus Matthews is Matthews was on the same schedule as Pablo Lopez. So that's where it made more sense for Zebby Matthews to come up, and maybe he wouldn't have been on the pitch count. I do have Festa in multiple leagues because he's got the great nickname Slim Reaper. And like, if we want to imagine what Paul would look like pitching on a mound, David Festa is probably it. And he got pulled at 4 2/3. That was the other stupid thing. It's like, oh my God, just let him go the 5.
One more.
And then of course the Twins bullpen blew it, and then they lost the game. So I have Festa everywhere. And the bad spring, if it wasn't, spring training stats are what they are, but he did not look good in the spring. But then he goes down to St. Paul and absolutely shoves and earned the promotion. So, I'm hoping he's up for a little bit and he sticks in the rotation. Paddock and Simeon Woods Richardson, I think, are just holding spots at this point, and I would like to see both these kids up. But I'm excited to see what Festa can do as he sticks up with the rotation. Hopefully he sticks up because, again, the Twins are going nowhere fast, and they need to turn this thing around in a hurry.
Yeah, I really like Festa. I think the stuff is really, really good. I do worry about what you guys are mentioning, though. They have not let him go deep into games. Even in the minor leagues, like, they didn't let him go deep into games. So wins may be a problem, and the fact that the Twins aren't very good, or at least aren't starting out very good. I think they will be better. May be a problem for wins as well. But if you're looking for good stuff, if you're looking for ratio help and some potential strikeouts, I think Festa is a really, really good option. I actually dropped him in TGFBI last week, unfortunately, so I'm going to have to try to go back and pick him back up because he was one of my more drafted guys. So I'm excited that Dave Festa is up. Zebby Matthews will be up at some point. All you Zebby Matthews lovers, just stay patient. I think Simeon Woods Richardson isn't going to be long for this rotation, though Chris Paddock probably will be in this rotation for a while because they just have I think Chris Paddock must have some dirt on like the front office there.
His pay stub is what he has on him. All right, guys, I got to drop
money. Yeah, Jason, it was great to see you. Want to remind everybody where you reached on social media real quick and plug anything you got going on before you take off?
Yeah. Yep, sure. Find me at Blue Sky Jason Collette. This past week, I was on the Baseball HQ podcast, and I was also on the Ordinary Effort podcast. So you can go back and look at and see how I collaborated with the guys to score 6 on an immaculate grid, and then a lengthy interview with Patrick Davitt as always on the HQ podcast, and then Collette Calls. I've been writing about the offense, that the numbers we've been talking about, and I'm going to take a deeper look under the hood at stolen bases for this week's column, which should be out by Tuesday.
There we go. All right. James and I are going to continue on and finish up these last 2 guys.
See ya.
Hi, Jason.
The first one is Chad Patrick of the Milwaukee Brewers, who, yes, he does have 2 first names, and that is always concerning, but pitching really, really well to start the season, a 1.76 ERA through 3 starts. Any interest there, James?
I mean, first, where do the Brewers find these guys? How is there always a Chad Patrick that comes up out of nowhere, and you're like, why is this guy pitching well?
It is such a Brewers name too, like a dude like who's just so generic named that just comes up and shoves for them.
Like, here's a 93 mile per hour fastball. Please try and hit it. Like, it's just, I mean, him, I think, and Quinn Priester right now of a similar ilk. I just get a little bit more excited about certain pitchers in this bucket who we're kind of, you hope to be league average, but the Brewers always wind up getting league average out of guys we think are slightly below league average. So in a 15-team league, I'm not running and jumping to get Chad Patrick or even Priester, but we just saw Tobias Myers do this for a whole year. We see them able to unlock these things with these guys with seemingly very little stuff and turn them into peak players that can be incredibly valuable for an entire season. So I think just based on that, I am, but I'm not. Again, it's a fastball to cutter, it's a sinker. That's kind of the whole thing with Chad Patrick. I'm not exactly running to get him, despite the fact that cutter is quite good and can take him a long way.
Yeah, the command is been pretty good for him. The control has not. He's currently walking guys at a 14% rate, which has helped lead to his 137 whip. So when you've got a whip that is almost as high as your ERA, that's usually a bad sign for some massive regression. I think Chad Patrick's probably going to hit that regression. He's got the A's coming to town this week, which is a lineup that can do damage against you. I don't know. I think I'm probably out on Chad Patrick because it's just such a vanilla profile, and I don't
love
even
these profiles. They always get something out of these profiles.
I know they do, but like, I just hate to bet on them because like you're always kind of teetering on whether or not you should start a guy like this, and I always feel like I make the wrong decisions on when to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one.
All right, let's talk about Landen Knack, who is up in the rotation for the Dodgers. Still fairly available. I always like to get a cheap part of the Dodgers team, whether that's the offense or the rotation, because there's just so much support that comes with those guys being on such a stacked roster. So are you interested in Landen Knack?
I like Knack a lot. I've always liked the stuff. He got tattooed when he pitched the other day, and that kind of maybe should dampen the expectations a bit much, but there's a good fastball and a good changeup here with Landen Knack, and it's a way that a guy like him can get left-handed batters out. That's always my number one thing I look at with young pitchers who are trying to make their way into rotations. Like, can you get hitters out from both sides of the plate? And the fact that Knack worked on like the hot new pitch during the spring, the kick change, and the fact that he was throwing it well then, it gives me some hope, moderate hope, relative hope, 15-team hope, not a 12 or a 10 guy by any means, but just someone that, like you said, grabbing a piece of that Dodgers rotation always seems like a good thing. And in fact, he has that, and he has a couple legitimate pitches that he can use and get guys out. I can see better days ahead for Knack, despite getting, again, crushed the other day in his first start.
Well, and you know what? I kind of love when a guy gets crushed there, because it makes them cheaper in FAAB, because people will go like, "Oh, well, what about this guy?" And they look at his stats and they go, "Oh no, I don't want that." Yeah. So like, I'm totally fine taking the gamble here, because I think it's going to be a low cost investment into the best team in baseball, which is something I always, like I said, always want to try to get. I think my biggest concern is like, how much do the Dodgers trust him to go deep into a game? Because it does. I don't know that they're going to let him go very deep, and they've got an amazing bullpen and kind of pick up the slack if he has any sort of struggles at all. So I think it's going to be a little bit of a tightrope, but one that I think I'm willing to take the gamble on because of that Dodgers team around him.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
All right, that's going to wrap us up for this episode, James. Thank you for coming on.
Oh, thank you so much. Appreciate you having me. Again, been listening to this podcast for an incredibly long time, so it's really cool to be a part of it. Hang out with you and Jason. Really happy to talk. That was fun. Go through all the FAAB guys.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to have to do it again. I'll remind everybody where you can reach on social media and plug everything you got going on.
Yep, social media, James Schiano, Twitter and Blue Sky. Again, if you guys are Mets fans, you happen to be tri-staters, you like to even hate listen to the Mets, Mets Stuff Podcast and the Foul Territory Network, 3 episodes a week, do a lot of fun stuff. Interviewing relief pitcher Heath Bell soon, which is a kind of a funny, strange piece of Mets lore, but always fun there. And then Rotoworld, Monday live stream, YouTube channel, James Schiano, same name, writing my columns there every single week. That's where you can get me.
All right. And you can reach me on social media at Justin Mason FWFB. Pretty much every social media platform, I'm on there to some extent or another. And then I am writing 4 days a week at Fantasy Pros and 5 days a week at Fangraphs. So catch me in all those places. And Friends of Fantasy Benefits podcast, hopefully get back to rolling here with Dave this Monday. So definitely check that out as well. For James, Jason, myself, thank you for listening. Have a fantastic baseball season.